everybody, and welcome to another episode of Positivity. We are delighted, I think very privileged to have the one and only Mr. Ian Braid with us. Hello, Ian. Oh no,
well, I am the one and only Ian Braid. I can't dispute that. Yes, but good afternoon.
And where are you today? Where in the wonderful world are you?
I always describe myself as being a northerner in a missionary in Sussex, because I spread the gospel of the north. And I am in a little village called Wivelsfield in East Sussex.
Oh, lovely. Now, this brings me on to an argument that we've had before about where God's county is.
Yes, and on the 8th day, God discovered Lancashire. I am a Lancastrian by birth.
The Herefordshire. Anyway.
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday that I met for the first time, right? So there's a bit of icebreaking sort of stuff going on. She'd pumped my tyres up because she'd heard me speak somewhere and was paying me compliments and can I have a coffee? And we did, right? So we met in a village near to us, socially distanced, obviously. And she said to me, what football team do you support? And before I could answer, she said, "Or are you too posh to support a football team?" Well, that was the end of it. That was the end of the relationship. You know what I mean? Any man who comes from Fleetwood in Lancashire cannot describe themselves as posh. End of.
Well, now you're down south, people might beg to differ, which they obviously do. Now, this will determine how posh you are, because this is Positivity. And what we ask everyone to do is come on board with a cup of tea to hand. What's your cup of tea of choice, please?
Well, I am hardly going to say Darjeeling or Earl Grey, am I? So it is English breakfast, but at least I do put the tea bag through a teapot first, not straight in the mug.
Now, is it Yorkshire tea or is it PG Tips?
Shut up. I've never found a Lancashire tea brand, but Mrs. Braid is in charge of I do some shopping, but Mrs. Braid is in charge of the majority of the shopping, so it's whatever tea she buys.
Good. And I hear you've also got biscuits and apples for this call as well, so you are fully
and chocolate. I just don't know how long it's going to last.
You say that like it's going to be a torturous time. This is meant to be fun and positive.
We have met before, Mrs. Bond.
So it'd be great to hear from you in terms of what you do for work and sort of how that's been impacted over the last few months with the wonderful world of COVID and so on.
Yeah, sure. Well, the current stage of the journey is that I run a small niche boutique, some would say, consultancy. You are talking to 100% of the workforce of said consultancy, and I do a lot of work around the concept of duty of care, not just in the pure legal sense, but more from a moral, ethical, well-being point of view, which has come out of my career in sport latterly. Well, it's come out of my career in sport, and also because of lived experience I've had in the past. And so, interestingly, I have once I worked out Zoom versus Teams versus Enably, which is my latest platform, Google Hangouts. I mean, I think I've been on a bloody one of these things. I've still been working, and the highlight of lockdown would have been, and I mean this genuinely, not just because it's you talking to me, but the session we did for the Mintridge Foundation ambassadors was great, and great for me, and I think helpful to many of the people that were on the call.
And in terms of what you do and the care that you give to your work, obviously during the majority of lockdown, you haven't been able to see face to face, and a lot of the support that you give is best when it's face to face. Have you struggled to adapt? How has it impacted you, and how you deliver what you deliver?
Well, I have delivered, as you know, workshops online, but being a man of a certain age, I can do old school. I just ring people up, and have a conversation. I haven't seen, you know, for all the obvious reasons, I haven't seen very many people. But as lockdown has eased, I've started to move about more again locally, and being mindful and all of that. I try to make as many meetings as possible outdoor. Why not walk at the same time, and why not involve my personal board member, Mr. Fred Braid, who you know is my Wheaton Terrier.
Yeah, and having, I guess, well, walking is clearly very good for the mental health, but do you feel that helps people open up more or engage more, or rather than being like this on Zoom, or maybe
Well,
even having a coffee?
I think there's one or two things really. The advantage, I think, sometimes of a workshop, particularly if you know the people that are involved, they can say as much or as little as they want and not feel they have to say something, which they may do if they were sat round a boardroom table, for instance. And also bear in mind some of the stuff we can get into, particularly when I start to deliver mental health first aid. It's quite intense, and you just know that anybody on the call is in a relatively safe space. They're at home. So that can work for some people. But I learned in when would it have been? 2004, a lot of years ago, I had the first of my hip replacements. And Harry Braid, who would have been 11 or so at the time, when I was doing my rehab, walk 50 meters today, do 60 meters tomorrow, do 70 meters the day after that. Harry used to come with me, and I'd been set a challenge by the doctor, and we do like a challenge, be able to walk a mile by the time you come back and see me in 6 weeks. Well, game on, right? And Harry came with me in all of these things, and it just evolved into what we still, you know, he's in his mid-20s now. Dad, I could do with a boy's walk. Or I now say, Harry, I could do with a boy's walk. And just that walking side by side with no eye contact, particularly when it's a sensitive, intimate, perhaps conversation, then I think it works really well too. So it's, it's a horses for courses, and it's probably up to me to work out what is best for any individual.
Yeah, that's so true though. It's that safety net, isn't it, of not being having to face something directly, and having another purpose, having a walk, or it takes the strain away for lots of people as well. Especially during this time, everyone's had really different issues and various things that they've had to deal with, haven't they?
There's been a great quote, which I'm sure you've heard because you're a well-listened, well-read woman. And I think it was the Canadian finance minister that said something about reference to lockdown. We've all been in this storm together, but we've all been in different boats. And I think it's really good because, there have been some people who've had a really shitty experience, be that loss of life, but it could be redundancy, it could be homeschooling small children, all of the above, right? So yeah, it's been very different for
Oh,
everybody.
yeah,
Everybody's got a lived
yeah,
experience.
that's so true. I mean, I had a catch-up call with school friends over the weekend, and just how it's impacted us all has, whether, like you say, work or social impact. You know, that's I'm gonna steal that quote from you, Ian, and I'm gonna use that moving forward.
You steal most of my work, Mrs. Wallace, so that would be nothing new here.
Yeah. So how have you personally and with your family, how have you kept positive during lockdown? Have there been any activities that you've been doing? You've mentioned that you've been going out for walks with your son and obviously with the one and only Fred Braid. But has there been anything else that you've looked at that's really helped get through this bizarre time?
Listen, I recognised very early on that I was in a privileged position, and it's remained so during lockdown. Both my kids are working, and my mother's okay, and yada yada yada. And I, very early on in lockdown, I had there's only 24 residences in Church Lane where I live. And very early on, my next door neighbour put a card through everybody's door saying, I don't know what this coronavirus thing is going to do to us all, but I think it could be scary and it could affect us. And here's mine and Joe's contact numbers. Should call us, we'll help you at any time. And the good side of me said, that's a really nice thing to do. The competitive side of me said, why didn't I think of it? And I had it at the back of my mind a lot. And a fundraising manager for a homeless shelter in Crawley in West Sussex. Anyway, got that all parked. Got a memory like an elephant, looked like an elephant. And everybody started tipping out onto Church Lane at 7:59 on the Thursday night, right? And giving it all of this. And I just thought, this is a really nice gesture, right? But it's just not going anywhere. We've got to do something. So I direct marketed every one of the houses, got my white latex gloves on and my mask and all of that. And I put a letter through everybody's door. Remember that gesture from Ian and Joe Wilkin? I'm sure you, like me, you thought it was really good. You can pay him back this Thursday. When you come out onto Church Lane to clap the key workers, bring 2 cans of food and we'll collect it and we'll give it to Ian to give to Crawley Open House, this shelter. And we filled the car, and I did it a second week, and I filled my car. We took it to the local hospice. And everybody's thinking, this is really good. Ian will pick all this food up, in perpetuity. And I'm thinking, I don't know how long this is going on for. I could be doing this on a wet Thursday night in November. I think, bugger that. So I set up a food bank with the help of the local village store in the next village. And, without making too much of this, I'm in a privileged position from a COVID point of view, and therefore I feel I have a responsibility. And doing something to help somebody else was very important to me and gave me perspective, and therefore and a relevant sense of purpose, which I think is also good for my mental health.
Yeah, and doing it collectively with others as well, when it's hard to see loved ones, actually those closest to you geographically, having that and that sense of community, did that help with that incredible act of kindness that you did?
Hugely. Because of other conversations we've had, that my father passed away at the end of last year, and that was in Cumbria, which is north of Lancashire, which is God's chosen county, as previously agreed. And I was so supported by the. the I was so supported by the community in this market town, Brampton, in North Cumbria, and I wanted to do something, not necessarily in the memory of my father, but in sort of a memory of I could take that and do something down here, and that was very important to me. And although the middle class of Church Lane have all gone behind their big bushes and private gates again, I still empty this collection point at least once a week in the village shop, and that continues to give me perspective.
Yeah, yeah, it's all about perspective. Especially when I found, especially when it was just, there were just a few of you at home, you couldn't go out and see people. It was good to engage with what else is happening in the world, to remember that yes, it is tough, but there are people that are experiencing things in much tougher environments. So thank you for all that you've done.
No, listen, I think you. That's okay. It did keep me connected because, from my own mental health point of view, I stopped listening to those 5:30 briefings every day very early on, right? Because I have a history that involves general anxiety, and that it would have just been like fill your boots in, and also other than the sports pages, for what they were worth for a while, I was really skipping the newspapers too, because I wasn't anything that said in relation to COVID might, maybe, should, or could. I avoided, because again, it just was good, to varying degrees, we were all making our knowledge up as we were going along, be you Ian Braid or people sitting on stage. So, just cut all that away. So to have that connectivity and know that I actually delivered some food one day to a proper food bank, and I went in with a lot of food from Church Lane at the same time as somebody came with a voucher who was in need of food from the food bank, and that'll stay with me for a while. And also, just to lighten the mood up as well, when I went to that food book, I had my food bank, I had my picture taken and appeared on the Burgess Hill Town Council pages of Facebook. So, I have arrived.
Where can we see that? Sorry, just so I can share that with the many followers.
I asked them to take it down with immediate effect.
That's so true. No, that's it. We spoke to somebody else, another guest on Positivity, and she did a very similar thing, and she stopped reading the newspapers or listening to the daily briefings so often, and her family created something called the good news of the day, and every day at supper they all came together for supper, and they had to bring one item of good news, no matter how big or small it was. It was for their own mental health, about being present again and celebrating those small wins that we probably haven't done in the past when we've been rushing around. So yeah, it's great to see how everyone's engaging with it in very different ways, and people have taken very similar approaches to not listening to those briefings. So.
Yeah.
No, interesting. So I mean, lockdown was the time of binge watching on Netflix and rediscovering films, podcasts, books. Is there anything that you've discovered or rediscovered during this time? And I really hope you share something that you shared the other day with everyone. If not, we can talk about that afterwards.
Well, you'll have to remind me what that is. I'm not on your wavelength there, Mrs.
Don't
W.
Tell Me the Score podcast. That's a separate story.
Oh, right, yes. No, oh, yeah. No, yes, I will come up with that, because that was stunning. Well, I suppose like everybody else that's got an interest in sport, I watched the Michael Jordan gig, right?
What did you think?
Jury's still out. Wow. I mean, I just thought it was fascinating, but if I had his talent, would I get to the top of my game and do it in the same way he did? I'm not so sure. So, but I mean, it's just a fact, having, that I've had the privilege of working with a lot of elite athletes. So I understand the mindset, but his was exponentially a warp factor beyond all of that. Mrs. Braid and I are currently working our way through The Crown. We're playing catch up on that.
What series? What episode? I can.
Well, no, Princess Margaret got married last night in Wivelsfield, so we've got a long way to go. But fascinating. But again, I did a lot of my work in the latter years in the sports system. Systems really interest me, and there is another system, and it's interesting who drives it. Like somebody like that Tommy Lafferty, for instance.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 of that. There's 1,000 of those in sport, unfortunately. So that's been my telly watching. Two podcasts I'd recommend to you. One is, and thank you for giving me the nudge, an episode from Don't Tell Me the Score, which is an interview with, well, he will call himself JK, but to you and I, particularly as conservative English people, he's Sir John Kerwin, the All Black. Just brilliant, speaking about his lived experience of mental health and turning that into a positive, which is, in my little world, it's what I'm trying to do too. But Sir John is ripping up trees with it, just brilliant. And there's a rugby podcast, and I'll find it and send it to you if you put links on the credits to this. But it's a Gagers fan of Ben Ryan.
Oh yes, yeah.
The English rugby coach. The English rugby coach. His book, Seven's Heaven, is just a read. But this podcast is a little bit more detailed below that. Once everybody is individuals and delegated leadership, and just brilliant.
I'll have to listen to that because I've got a love with Fiji, and obviously he's had a big impact in Fijian rugby. So
yeah, it's just brilliant. I wrote a blog, and again, maybe I'll share that with you, because somebody who Ben Ryan knew shared my blog with Ben Ryan, and he pumped it round his network, and that was a feel good factor for the day, because I just thought it was really kind. And actually, what it is, because it's sort of relevant to this conversation, it was in Mental Health Awareness Week, and I wrote about, well, it's called A Game of Two Halves, and it's the first half of the first bit of 2020, and then lockdown, so I'd be very happy for you to to share that.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you.
Well,
thank you so much for coming on my little lockdown hobby of positivity. And
I can feel the hook coming on now.
My final question to you, we've spoken about this before the call, is who would you like to nominate to be on the next episode? Who is one of the most positive people in your life?
Well, as I said, I dealt with many high performance athletes across across many sports, but two that come to mind when I was issued by yourself with the edict to nominate somebody else, otherwise you're not coming on. One is a lady called, well, her married name is Ann Usher, but she was as a Paralympic athlete, she was called Ann Dickens, won gold So has kept her title for another year because of the lockdown. Take a positive out of that. And the other is a guy called Jonathan Drain, who I'm sure may tell you some or all of his story, but he too is a Paralympian from Rio, and has used his platform as an athlete to go on to make a huge difference to other people. And
Wow,
it's
what a platform they have, don't they?
they do, and it's a privilege for me to have known some of these people.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's there too. You can come on every week if we get to nominations.
Yeah, or you've gone through your network. Ian, will you come on again?
Please. Yeah, we can have more arguments about
Yeah,
telepathy. Oh, Ian, thank you so
indeed.
much. It's been incredible to hear what you've been up to. And we wish there were more Ian Braids in the world. So thank you very much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure, Alex. Thank you very much.